Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on COVID-19 guidance for early learning and care contractors. This webinar is being presented by the California Department of Education's Early Learning and Care Division and the Fiscal and Administrative Services Division. This webinar is being held on February 19, 2021, and is scheduled to run from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. We want to thank you for taking some time, as always, to join us for our this webinar series. My name is Steve Profiter. I'm the Director of the Early Learning and Care Division at the California Department of Education. Since our last webinar, many things continue to happen at CDE. As you know, things are fluid and frequently changing, and we're doing our best to keep up with those changes. I'd like to take a moment to mention a couple things from the CDE to CDSS transition that will be occurring by July 1, 2021. Governor Gavin Newsom appointed Dr. Maria Guadalupe Jaime Milham as the Deputy Director over the newly created division, the Child Care and Development Division. And she comes to the Department of Social Services from the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. She began her work at CDSS this week. I think it was February 16th. And we are very happy to welcome her to Sacramento. Much of the CDE family, and I'm sure many of you, have had the privilege of working with Dr. Jaime Milham, and we're thrilled she'll be leading this work at CDSS. In thinking about other items, as we do when we reflect in these webinars, kind of the reality on the ground. We know that so many of you are working in programs that are open and exposed to risk every day. While we know that things look different in many counties, we know that many counties have reached Tier 1B in terms of the vaccine distribution. So things are looking a little bit better in many places. And we know that the administration, both the California, the governor, and then the federal Biden administration are working hard to get vaccines out faster to states, to counties. So with that, we'd like to kind of mention here the Department of Public Health, the new website where you can get information on vaccine, the myturn.ca.gov. You can go to this site and determine your eligibility regarding your eligibility to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Once on the website, you can kind of provide your name and other information, so you can also get notified when the vaccine is available to you based on the criteria you provide. I actually was able to go on the other day, and I signed up myself. So yeah. So before I hand over to Erica, our Associate Director, for some remarks, I just want to again thank you for everything that you all are doing to help support families and children. It's certainly not easy. It's certainly not easy. So thank you for continuing to do the hard work, the labor of love that we know that it is for all of you. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Erica for some remarks.
Thank you so much, Steve. Erica Otieno, Associate Director, Early Learning and Care Division, ELCD. Thank you again for joining our webinar Friday. And thank you also for your continued work with children and families in your respective communities. The last few days have been full of promising updates about vaccine rollout for childcare workers and educators in some communities. Also, COVID-19 cases are declining. These developments give us much needed hope that one day life will return to normal. Really looking forward. We at ELCD will remain committed to the partnership with you to enable safe reopening of closed programs, and we continue to support those programs that never close. Thank you. Today, there are no specific program updates from Program Quality Implementation Office, PQI office. However, we have some general information. We want to let you know that remote monitoring, technical assistance, and training are ongoing. We just concluded our webinar Wednesday this past few days. Part of Webinar Wednesday series is what PQI Office provides as part of training and technical assistance required for contracts. That training that we just did focused on providing additional ideas for maintaining program quality during pandemic, and then pulling it all together for the program self-evaluation. We are going to have a subsequent webinar in April or thereabout for completing a modified program self-evaluation that will meet the regulation in the context of the pandemic. So stay tuned. I want to end with a special thank you to all members of this team. Thank you. Enjoy the session. And now I'm going to hand it over to Virginia.
Thanks, Erica, and thanks everyone for joining. I am Virginia Early, the administrator of our policy office and the Early Learning and Care Division. We have a lot of policy updates for you today, so we'll be talking more. There are a lot of things that are sort of moving around, a lot of moving pieces, and so glad that we have this opportunity to connect with all of you and give you the up-to-the-minute updates on everything. Also, we know that some of you have been asking about the timeline for the state plan for the Federal Child Care and Development Block Grant. And while we don't have a specific update in this presentation, we just wanted to share that we are revising the timeline that's on our website, and we'll post a revised timeline as soon as it is approved. So with that, I will turn it over to Alana, who is our moderator.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alana Andrade, and I'm a child development consultant in the policy office here at ELCD. As I am moderating the webinar today, we have a great team, as usual, answering questions and making this presentation run smoothly for you. From the policy office, we also have Danielle Davis, Eric Dunk, and Barbara Lindsay. From the Program Quality Implementation PQI office, we have Crystal Devlin, Cassandra Lewis, Brittany Sheffield, Mir Zong, Richard Miller, Serene Yi, and Katina Boulay. From the Child Development, Nutrition, and Fiscal Services Unit, we have CDNFS, we have Corey Kahn, Andrea Johnson, and Alan Lynch. From the Child Development Management Information System, CDMIS, we have Robert Halm and Carly Nodahara. And also here to answer any questions regarding nutrition or food programs, we have Chashiki Sharma. Our team is committed to being as responsive as possible. Just to reiterate, our team will not be able to answer every question. We appreciate being able to engage with you in such a quick and fast responsive way. I want to mention that our chat box is disabled. So we'll be able to share links with you there, but you won't be able to use the chat box to message us. Please use the Q&A feature instead. Back over to Stephen to talk about our agenda.
Thanks, Alana. So as you heard from Alana, we have a great team on this webinar to address your questions and help prepare for today in each of our webinars. As you could tell by the list of folks that are on kind of supporting that this truly is a team effort, and it's engagement across multiple divisions in the Department of Education so that we could provide you with the best information and be as responsive as possible. As we normally do in today's webinar, you'll hear about some policy updates as well as some fiscal updates. As mentioned, we'll be providing updates not as mentioned, but one of the things that we'll be touching on are some fiscal updates regarding federal funds and guidance. So a couple of pretty hot topics here in the last few weeks. After we run through our agenda, we'll also review some questions that have come into the ELCD emergency email box. We're going to do our best to address as many questions as we can. You can also use, as Alana mentioned, the Q&A function in Zoom to put your questions in. And for any questions, as usual, that we don't get to, we'll take back to address as FAQs on our website. And I'm going to hand over to Virginia to discuss the hot topic of federal funds.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I think hot topic is definitely the right word for this. So in terms of an update on federal funds, we talked to you last week about how, at our last webinar, rather, about how in early February 2021, California was awarded $964 million in Federal Child Care and Development Fund, or CCDF, as we call it sometimes, funds. And so we also talked in the last webinar about how in the fall of 2020, both the administration and the legislature set priorities for $300 million of any additional federal funding. And this was in Senate Bill or SB 820 and Section 61. And there were 6 priorities listed. And 3 of those priorities were met in the fall with federal, with existing resources through the federal coronavirus relief funds. So we spent a lot of time sort of saying, okay, well, here are the things that have been met so far. Here are the things that have not been met yet. Here's sort of as much as we have at this point from the administration and the legislature about priorities for additional federal funds. And now we have the federal funds. We wanted to give you a sense of what to expect. So now, like I said, things have shifted, and the legislature is now considering Assembly Bill or AB 82 and Senate Bill or SB 93. The bills are identical. They just have an Assembly version and a Senate version, and they contain different elements than the ones originally contained in SB 820. So I want to go to the next slide to talk a little bit more about these bills. So like I said, the bills are identical. So any final changes to law have to be approved by both houses, which is why there's an Assembly version and a Senate version. We don't yet know which one will be the final one that passes. So we wanted to give you both numbers in case you wanted to monitor both of them. Based on some things we've heard, AB 82 will be the final version, but again, we don't quite know yet. And we've heard that they may be taken up for a vote as soon as Monday in both houses. So this is moving pretty quick. Obviously, as soon as any language passes, we'll be communicating with the field about the changes and then additional guidance. But we wanted to give you a heads up about how the legislative conversation has shifted since our last webinar. So what is in the language? So the language appropriates $402 million in Federal Child Care and Development Fund for a couple different things. So there's $244 million for one-time $525 per child stipends for children enrolled in any early learning and care program. So we'll talk a little bit more about the stipends on the next 2 slides, but just knowing that it's there, it's going to be based on November 2020 data. And I'm sure many of you are curious about what it can be spent on. The language says that it can be used, the language as is currently written in the bill, which is not yet law, says that the stipend can be used to support, for pandemic relief, decrease enrollment or closures, ensuring that providers and programs are able to open or reopen. So pretty broad language in the bill. Again, as this sort of, once a bill passes, we will then turn around to give guidance to the field, but we wanted to alert you to things that are being considered. So there's also, in this bill, there's also $76 million funding for AP programs to extend emergency childcare for currently served families through June 30th, 2022. And then there's $80 million to provide additional emergency childcare vouchers through both the Alternative Payment Program and the California Alternative Payment Program, or CAP, and then the Migrant AP Program, or CMAP. So we know that many of you probably have a lot of questions about the details of this, and we will be issuing guidance, but just know that this is not yet law. So we cannot issue guidance before the law is passed. And once the final language is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, we'll be then giving directives. For example, we'll be able to then give you an answer to the question, if we have, can we, use the 80 million to re-enroll families that were previously in emergency childcare and then disenrolled. So we'll be getting more into the weeds with you all as this moves through the process and is passed. I suspect our next webinar will have a lot more pieces for you on that. But just know that we wanted to talk you through the proposals that are on the table. And then there's some funding for both CDE and DSS just to cover administrative costs. Just like as you can imagine, putting this much money out the door takes a lot of work for our agencies, and so there's a recognition of that. And then there are also additional non-operational days due to COVID-19 for both AP and our CFCC providers. So specifically, that is 16 additional non-operational days for AP providers, and we're still clarifying what it is for CFCC providers. But we think that it's probably a total of 30 additional non-operational days for the CFCC providers. Our guidance will clarify and confirm what that is. So on our next slide, we're going to go deeper, and Alan will take us a little bit deeper into some of the pieces on the proposed stipends from these two bills. So take it away, Alan.
Thank you, Virginia. Good morning. I am Alan Lynch from the Child Development and Nutrition Fiscal Services Office, and I want to expand on Virginia's discussion regarding the funding appropriated specifically for the stipends. So the language in AB 82 and SB 93 indicates a per child stipend amount of $525 for each subsidized child enrolled in November 2020. As indicated in the language, the stipend allocations are for both direct service and alternative payment programs. And these stipends are to address costs associated with the COVID-19 pandemic in the case of decreased enrollment or closures, and to ensure that programs are able to remain open or able to reopen. The program types listed on the slide are eligible to receive these one-time per child stipends. For the direct service programs, this would include the General Child Care and Development Program, California State Preschool Program, Family Child Care Home Education Networks, the Severely Disabled Programs, Migrant Child Care and Development Programs. On the alternative payment program side, this would include CalWORKs Stage 1, Stage 2, and Stage 3, as well as the alternative payment programs and the migrant alternative payment programs. As Virginia said, it is important to note that this language has not yet been enacted into law, so no allocations can be made until legislation is enacted, and CDE has been provided both the funding and the authority to actually issue those stipends. So once the legislation is passed, the CDE will provide additional guidance as needed, again, as Virginia said. So we go to the next slide. So while we're waiting for the language within AB 82 and SB 93 to be enacted, the CDE is proactively asking that contractors review their previously reported data to ensure the allocations are issued accurately. Per the language in the bill, the one-time per child stipend amount will be based on the number of subsidized children enrolled in November 2020. An email to subscribers on the ELCD distribution list went out to the field this week to notify agencies of this information. But just to recap, here's a reminder of what data needs to be validated by our contractors. For direct service programs, The Child Development Management Information System, or CDMIS, will be utilized to determine the number of subsidized enrollments. We will be pulling the enrollment data submitted by the programs on the CDD 801A report for the month of November 2020. Direct service contractors should have also received a separate email that indicated their currently reported CDD 801A enrollment data for November 2020, and it also provided 2019 data for comparison purposes. This email was sent to the program director contact listed in CDMIS. For alternative payment and CalWORKS programs, we will be utilizing the November 2020 caseload data that has been submitted by contractors through the online CalWORKS/alternative payment reporting system. All contractors should have already submitted the necessary data as the due dates for these reports are passed. However, CDE is providing contractors with an opportunity to ensure all enrollments are captured within their reporting. And the deadline to verify that information is November 2020 is Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. That's next Wednesday. All revisions to November 2020 data must be submitted by the state for purposes of the stipend allocation that CDE will be issuing. Now back to you, Virginia, for some more policy updates.
Sounds great. And I think I want to just verbally address some of the pieces that are coming up in the chat while we're on this topic about the bills. So AB 82 and SB 93 are replacing the previously specified priorities from Senate Bill 820 from the late summer and fall. And so we just want to note for you all that there were different things that we maybe talked to you about last week or last webinar, such as, you know, a $30 million for CCTR expansion, that these bills strike out. So take some time, look at the bills to sort of familiarize yourself with that language, because the things that we talked about last week have been, the legislature is proposing to amend with these bills that we're talking to you about today. So moving on, one piece that you'll see if you look at both AB 82 and SB 93 is that there's language about how these bills are implementing an agreement with the Child Care Providers United Union. So this agreement was collectively bargained by the governor and CCPU earlier this month, but appropriations specific to this agreement need to be appropriated and approved by the legislature, with statutory authority for CDE to enact those agreements. So we know that many of you have questions about childcare bargaining. So, like, what is the new childcare union? What is happening with bargaining? What does this mean in terms of our state subsidized childcare programs? So we just wanted to briefly sort of bring folks, just give a brief summary of this. So the Child Care Providers United, or CCPU union, was ratified in July 2020 after it was passed by Assembly Bill 378 in 2019-20. So the union began collectively bargaining with the state last fall. So the state basically means all of the different agencies that are part of the state. The California Department of Human Resources, known as CalHR, is the lead negotiator on bargaining for the administration. So they bargain on behalf of the governor's office. And then other members of the state's bargaining team include staff from Department of Finance, Department of Social Services, and staff at CDE. So going on to the next slide, we often hear questions about, you know, what can you tell me about what's happening as part of these discussions? And we know that you, as engaged members of our early learning and care community, might have questions. So we just wanted to throw this out that, you know, while we recognize there are articles in the media, and many of you have been reaching out to your consultants, we at CDE are not able to speak to any ongoing conversations that are happening at the bargaining table. And we also want to point out that some people have asked us questions about, you know, are there still management bulletins, or, you know, how do we get information? And so we just wanted to share with you that we have not changed any of our processes in getting information out to the field. So really, you know, there's still going to be management bulletins and those pieces, or emails to our listserv. So, you know, continue to stay subscribed to our listserv for the latest and greatest, whether it's in terms of management bulletins or other pieces. So pivoting a bit to a recent management bulletin on our next slide. So Management Bulletin 2103, we talked about this one in our last webinar. We talked all of you through it. And we wanted to update you that since that we have rescinded this revised guidance on 12-month eligibility, specifically this Management Bulletin 2103 was rescinded on February 12th. And really, we heard that there was a lot of strain in terms of timing of this management bulletin on our contractors. And we wanted to be mindful and aware of that. So we have reinstated Management Bulletin 1714, which is our 12-month eligibility and implementation guidance. But so effective immediately, contractors should follow the guidance in 1714 until the proposed 12-month eligibility regulations are in effect, which will then be what is to be followed. So a couple things on these 12-month eligibility regulations. They are in the proposed stage. They are not yet effective. We are anticipating a July 1, 2021 effective date, so in a couple months here. However, this date is not final. We will keep all of you updated on the effective date of the regulations once we receive final approval from the Office of Administrative Law. So that will be approximately a month before the effective date, so June, early June, if the July date is what is moving forward. So we want to point out and really highlight for all of you that the policy changes that we included in 2103 are in the proposed 12-month eligibility regulations that are awaiting final approval. So you know, we understood that maybe this wasn't, the timing wasn't ideal because of the current state of things, but really wanting to highlight for you all that the current timeline has the regulations with these same changes going into effect in July. And we'll keep you posted if the timeline changes, and you'll have the opportunity, as I mentioned, to see them before they go into effect. So we've also, just as an FYI, updated Management Bulletin 2104 to remove the reference of the recertification, of the new recertification process that was in 2103. So that Management Bulletin 2104 is now in alignment with 1714. So I will now pass it back to Alan and for his other fiscal updates.
Thank you again, Virginia. So the fiscal update we'd like to provide this week is in regards to an email sent to the ELCD distribution list on February 16th. This topic was also covered in our last webinar, but we received a number of requests to go over this information again. The next two slides are to review whether or not hazardous pay and/or stipends are an allowable expense to charge to early learning and care contracts. We want to be very clear that the stipends or hazard pay that we are discussing on this slide are not related to those being proposed in AB 82 and SB 93. This is in relation to specifically using your CDE contract funds, such as your preschool or general child care contract types, for either stipends or for additional hazard pay. Early learning and care contract funding terms and conditions require that all contractors adhere to all state and federal regulations. Federal regulations require stipends to be a pre-approved expenditure. Given that pre-approval was not authorized, contractors should not issue stipends to employees utilizing CDE contract funds. In other words, if your agency has the ability to provide stipends to employees from another source, these should not be charged to your child development contracts with CDE. However, contracts may issue hazardous pay to employees consistent with the Code of Federal Regulations 2 CFR 200.430 if they have the funding to do so. Please note that hazardous pay applies to those directly employed by the contracting agency and does not apply to providers. Okay, so Federal Regulation 2 CFR 200.430 and subsequent guidance provided throughout the COVID-19 pandemic supports the compensation and extra pay so long as the agency ensures that the compensation meets the following criteria. Is reasonable for the services rendered, is paid pursuant to an agreement entered into in good faith between the agency and the employee, conforms to established written policies and procedures of the agency, and is consistently applied to both federal and non-federal activities. To comply with these requirements and issue hazard pay, contractors may develop written policies and procedures that include the beginning of the pandemic if necessary. As stated in the fourth bullet, contractors must not differentiate between the funding source of each employee for the purpose of determining hazardous pay for each employee. This means that if a contractor has 2 employees with substantially similar duties, and the employees are funded by 2 different income sources, for instance, one is paid through the child development contract and another is paid by private pay family fees, the 2 employees must receive similar hazardous pay regardless of the availability of funds within each income source. In other words, hazardous pay should be reasonable and implemented fairly for all impacted employees without regard to the funding source. And now back to Alana for the Q&A portion of the webinar.
Thank you, Alan. And we are very lucky with about 30 minutes for us to work towards our question and answers, and we still have some open. So we're very happy for that. So let's see, there are a lot of questions about the stipends that Virginia mentioned that were in the law that is not yet passed. And a lot of folks have been asking about when these funds need to be spent. So I would like to invite Virginia and/or Andrea to speak on potentially if this was a law, when those funds would need to be spent.
So I think we don't want to speak to any timelines at this point, since first of all, this is not yet a law, and second of all, that would be part of any guidance that we would be developing. So Andrea, is there anything you want to add on top of that?
No, I don't have anything to add, just to say, though, that we will, as we receive more information, and if this bill is passed as is, we will certainly, send more information out to the field as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I see a lot of questions about, are the funds to be spent this year, and what's the timeline, and when will we get the funds? I think at this point, the legislature hasn't even voted on the bill yet, and the governor has not signed it. So we're going to take all of your questions back so that as we're working on our guidance, we can make sure that we're addressing those and that we have answers for you, but we don't have the answers yet. We did want to inform you of these proposals being considered so that you had as much of a heads up about them as possible.
So Virginia and Andrea, so in the spirit of giving a heads up as possible, there were a few questions about those stipends of which programs were included. So there's one about part-time CSPP and one about providers and AP programs. Is that something that we can speak to now, or is that something that we'll wait until the guidance is?
Yeah, actually, Alana, if we can go back to Alan's first slide, we displayed the program types that are listed in these bills. And I think that will make clear which program types are eligible for the stipends, for the per child stipends.
Sure, that's slide 7. So Barbara, if you could please scroll back to slide 7 and we'll just hold that up on the screen for a moment. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I would also like to call back Virginia and or Danielle as well to speak about the rescinding of 2103. There are a few questions about that.
Sure, happy to address. Is there a specific question that would be helpful to focus on?
I think it would just be to reiterate that it's no longer active and also what is now currently active so that contractors know what they're to be doing.
Yeah, so I'll start and then Danielle, feel free to chime in with anything as helpful. So just to reiterate on that management bulletin that that it was rescinded and that currently 1714 is reinstated, but there are regulations that will be going into effect, we think, in early July that the field will have a sort of a notice of about a month to sort of review and work to implement. And the policy changes that we had put in Management Bulletin 2103 will be in those regulations.
Perfect. Thank you, Virginia. And we're also having some questions about the CCTR expansion funds and the CCTR expansion grant. I would like to ask Stephen to speak. So I'll just, a few of them are very similar, but I'll call out one. So that, what's going on with the CCTR expansion funds? I think is one specific question that we got.
Thank you, Alana. So many of you, or some of you may have received an email or communication, I think a couple weeks back, when we had some indication that additional federal funds would be on the way. As you may recall, Senate Bill 820, Section 61 provided priorities for how additional federal funds would be spent, and included in those priorities was expansion, kind of a limited term expansion for general child care or CCTR contracts. So we had reached out to applicants who hadn't either been funded in whole or at all to update some information. Unfortunately, what we see in the legislation now is doesn't include CCTR expansion as a priority. So as always, we will continue, we'll follow, and we will watch legislation to see what may come. You know, as I think we all heard at the top of this webinar, there's about 964 million, and there is only a share of that has been allocated. At least is proposed to be allocated, I should say. So we'll continue to watch legislation. We know there's a need out there for expansion for infant and toddler care and school age care as well. I mean, there's needs all around. So we'll continue to kind of remind of that need, and we'll continue to watch for legislation.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. So there are still a lot of questions about the stipends. And again, I'm going to reiterate what Virginia and Andrea spoke to, that this is not yet law. Therefore, there is no timeline that we can give you. And secondarily, there are a lot of questions, Virginia and Andrea, about why November 2020 was chosen. Is there something that you can speak to about that?
I think that question, I'll take a stab at it. But the bottom answer is that that's what's in the bill. I think for more details about why that was chosen, we direct folks to the administration and the legislature, since this language was included in the collective bargaining agreement with the Child Care Providers Union, and then put into proposed bill language by the Department of Finance, and is now in print by the legislature. So for this, that was something that came up as as part of that, and we would direct folks to ask those questions to the administration. Anything else on that one that you want to add, Andrea?
No, you covered it. Thank you, Virginia.
So Virginia, that last sentence that you said also spoke to a few different questions that we're seeing about how to advocate if there's something in a bill that they wish to see, and you sort of spoke to talking to a legislature and whatnot. Is there a way that you can also reiterate that there's how folks can advocate?
Sure. So I know some contractors are part of different advocacy organizations and membership organizations, so that's always an option. One way is to let us know at CDE. So if we're in a room providing technical assistance, we can elevate, oh, this would actually be very hard for contractors to implement. This would be more difficult. This would be easier. So I think elevating those pieces to us that make it easier or harder from the field's perspective. But then also, always we have an elected legislature and governor in California. So anyone should feel more than free at any point to contact their assembly members and senators. You can find them pretty easily on the Assembly and Senate websites, and usually they have ways that you can get in contact with them and share your thoughts about different aspects.
Thank you, Virginia. So I'm also seeing a lot of questions regarding the hazard pay, which is a very, what was the term you used earlier? Hot topic. So Barbara, can I ask you to scroll back to slide 12? So our participants can see it. And then I'm going to perhaps call on either Andrea or Alan to answer a question out loud. Let me see. So where can we find the information on the hazard pay slide? I can answer that one. That one, currently all this information is also on our FAQ webpage, and I'll ask that Brittany put that into the chat for you. Let's see if there's any other questions that I can pull up that our fabulous team has not been able to answer quite yet. So here's a question. In regards to hazard pay, what if the agency has not funds to pay for the hazard pay? Will there be additional funding from the state to cover hazard pay? Perhaps I can ask Andrea and or Alan to speak on that.
Yeah, this is Andrea. So this is specifically for contractors that do have funding for hazardous pay. We do not have an allocation to increase any contracts for this specific purpose. So hopefully that answers the question.
Excellent. And I was also reminded that there was an e-blast about this that was sent out through the ELCD listserv, and that was sent off on Tuesday. So do check your email box. And we do recommend that you sign up for the listserv, as we send a lot of information via email. Okay. There is a question about contracts and issuance to contractors. So I'll ask that Andrea speak back. So when can we expect the 2021-2022 contracts to be issued?
So the timeline, it should not be any different because those timelines are stated in statute. So we are required to issue early learning and care contracts by June 1st. So that should not change.
Excellent, thank you. So as CDE has been doing a lot of wonderful webinars, there have been some questions regarding the Wednesday webinar that our fabulous PQI consultant team did. So I'm going to ask Erica to speak a few questions were about, will that webinar be made available?
Thank you so much, Alana. Yes, the PowerPoint will be available. We're just making sure that we have all the 508 and all those requirements done, and then we're going to definitely post it.
Great. And Erica, if there are folks who have questions regarding anything that happened in the webinar, how should they get their question addressed?
If you have any question about the webinar, you I can, on the email, we could email the webinar team lead. That will be Joycelyn. If you're listening, that will be you. So we'll post that shortly for you. That'll be Joycelyn. And you can also email any of the administrators, or even better, you can email any one of the consultants. So maybe if somebody can just help me post the PQI consultant list. Thank you. Thank you, Alana. So any of us will answer the question you have on the webinar. Thank you, Alana.
Great. Thank you, Erica. There are some questions about where it will be posted as well.
That's a good question. So we may post it, Alana. Yeah, we may post it since it's COVID related. I think we may post it on the COVID webpage. Yeah, so stay tuned. We'll let you know. It makes sense to post it on the COVID webpage.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm scrolling through the unanswered questions.
Can I just add one more thing to a previous answer, Alana?
Sure.
So we have a question from Lori at 1042 about sort of how to give public comment at budget hearings. And so I wanted to just add to what I had said before. So thank you for your question, Lori. So that is another great way to provide input on the budget proposals. And so by giving public comment at those various hearings, each hearing has an opportunity for public comment where you can directly speak to those that are at the hearing and listening, as well as the members of the committee and their staff. So I'm going to put the links to both the Assembly and the Senate budget committees in the chat so folks can have those.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Virginia. So there's still more questions regarding the stipends, which has not been made into law yet. So we'll hold off for a moment. We're getting a lot of thank yous. I appreciate that. Andrea, there's another question about hazard pay. Can you pay hazard pay with current CDE funding?
Yes. So that was what we were describing, attempting to describe on that slide, that hazard pay is an allowable expense that you can charge to the CDE contract. But again, as long as you have funds within the contract to be able to do so, because additional funding was not provided for this purpose.
Perfect. So there is also a question from regarding the nutrition menus. And so I'd like to answer this one out loud. So the question was, regarding to the CACFP menus, do we put the total amount served or the amount required per child? And so I'll give you the answer that Shashimi told us. For the menu, you put the name of the food served for each component provided and the serving size for each age group, which is the amount required per child. Also, I'm going to post a website to be referred to. It's the CFCCP meal pattern webpage for more guidance and training. So I'll put that in the chat now. Oh, Virginia, I think that you posted the Assembly hearings to just the panelists, which would be very exciting.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Alana. I
just looked.
apparently was failing at chat. I apologize, everyone. Okay, thank you for catching that.
Not a fail, not a
okay.
fail.
Hopefully, I send it to all the attendees now as well.
Perfect.
Alana, maybe I need to put a lot of clarification to my answer to the question about the webinar. So if it's specific question about the webinar, specific to the webinar as a whole, then it goes to Joycelyn. But otherwise, if it's contract, any contract related question, please refer your question to your assigned consultant. We just don't want Joycelyn to be inundated with questions, just her. Yeah. So it's anything about the scheduling, format, like kudos to all those excellent presentation format. Those should go to Joycelyn. For specific questions, you go to the consultants or admin or myself, Erica. And I know,
Okay.
Alana, you're going to come up with some questions also that came up on the ERS. So when you're ready for that, let me know so I can address them.
Yes, a few of them were already responded to, so let's see.
Very good. But I could just share it in a minute if you want me to, so.
I'm looking for a question to say out loud for you. I mean, you're welcome to also just speak on the ERS while I'm looking up a specific question.
Okay. So on the environment rating scale, there are 4 of them. I just want to give you like a quick context, usage, and where we are right now. The context is that the environment rating scales, the 4 of them, they're designed to measure quality. They're required by Title V, right? They're reliable and valid tools. You all know that. Their usage, they're used for self-assessment, they're used for monitoring, and they're also used for rating. So those 3 uses we know. So we know about the pandemic. We know some programs are doing distance learning, some are doing hybrid, and some are doing in-person. We have issued the management bulletin on program quality. We did the training last Wednesday. We see there's still some confusion out there in the field about the environment rating scale. Just want to let you know that this afternoon, we will have a meeting, actually in a couple of hours, with First 5 California. We'll come out with specific guidance. We want to be on the same page so that we giving the same message to the field on the environment rating scale. Please stay tuned. The key and most important thing that we want to let you know is that we know about health and safety for children, for staff. We don't want to put children in harm's way. We don't want to put staff in harm's way. So we want to meet the regulation and the context of the pandemic. So we'll try to clarify, put something on paper. You know me very well, like to make sure it's not what Erica said or what somebody said. We want to put something clearly for you, so stay tuned. We're going to hopefully have something for if you're in person, this is what you need to do. If you're doing hybrid, this is what you need to do. And also if you're doing distance learning, what is the requirement? So stay tuned. I hope that helps.
Always. Thank you, Erica. So while our team is going ahead and trying to finish all of the responses to you, I'm going to read off of our fabulous resources as you continue to do the wonderful work in the field. So the ELCD COVID-19 guidance webpage is where you can find webinar slides and transcriptions, management bulletins, and frequently asked questions. That can be found at https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/re/ELCD COVID-19.asp. The ELCD emergency email inbox is still available to you for submitting any questions that you may have. That email box is elcdemergency@cde.ca.gov. And also, To reach your assigned PQI office regional consultant, as Erica just mentioned, the consultants are most easily reached by email. You can find a list of the consultants by region by going to https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/ci/assignments.asp. Or you might call 916-322-6233, or you can call the PQI office to reach a consultant of the day. The Child and Adult Care Food Program County Analytics List can be found at https://www.cde.ca.gov/ls/NU/CACFP-contact.asp. And the Child and Adult Care Food Program webpage can be found at https://www.cde.ca.gov/ls/NU/CC. That has a link to trainings and much more. You may also find the Master Plan for Early Learning and Care at the hhs.chhs.ca.gov/home/master-4-early-learning-and-care. Thank you for your attention, and I'd like to invite Erica and Stephen back to conclude our webinar.
Thank you so much, Alana. On behalf of ELCD, CDE staff, I want to thank you again for participating. Let's continue to take care of ourselves and others by wearing masks, maintaining physical distance, and washing our hands in accordance with the recommendations of health professionals. Thank you again. Stay safe. Talk to you soon. Now over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Erica. Just thank you again. We can't say thank you enough. We're seeing a lot of that in the questions. So just thank you again for everything you're doing, for engaging with us this morning, for providing your questions. Your voice is important. And we've talked a little bit about today about how other ways you can make your voice heard. So we hope that's helpful. And we'll go ahead and conclude here. And just again, thank you for taking time this morning to join us. We hope you'll join us for our next webinar scheduled for 2 weeks from now, Friday, March 5th, 2021. Please take care of yourselves, be safe, and be kind to each other. We can't do any of this without all of you. And we're working to get back to normal. We're looking forward to getting there together. Thank you again, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks. Have a great Friday and weekend.